Hey, greetings, this is Fred in Alaska. Sorry it's been a minute dealing with background stuff, logistics. You guys seen where I've been going. It takes gas, time, and lots of energy. What I wanted to share with you today happened to Rick. Happened to Rick north of Tanana on the opposing side of the Yukon, further up into the mountains. I forget the name of the mountain range immediately offhand. I'll get that info to you, Dave. So he was on a well-intended backpacking trip to spread ashes of his mom. Now, he had planned this trip for 2 years to get to this place his mom had always talked about going to revisit. She never made it, so he thought it would be a very good tribute to spread her ashes there in this place that she longed to go back to and all that, which is very heartwarming in the thought. Well, so he takes off. He caught a puddle jumper, little bush plane, got flown in, dropped off in the area, and requested that the pilot come back in 4 days. Strictly because he wanted to do a little hanging out in the area kind of type of deal. Sorry. So as he's walking around this area and he's going to certain little meadows and spreading ashes here and spreading ashes over here, and he gets back around to the far side of what's basically an alpine pond, right? Because from where he landed, he had to go up in elevation to get to some of these places because it's like a small bowl of moderate sized mountains. So he's up on one of these alpine meadows, and there's a pond, and he's going to the opposite side of it. Well, on the opposite side of it is beginnings of a tree line that cuts down into a valley that opens back up going to the west. So as he's up in there, now you got to understand, in this valley, there's between Rampart and Tanana, if you were to draw two straight lines up, it's roughly in this area, right? So, and there is a very large area. And so, he had 4 days to do it. So anyway, he's going back around to the far side towards these trees because he, in his mind, now this is just day one, he just been there a handful of hours, right? So he's going to set up his camp in those trees. Good spot, got the meadow and a nice pond right there, couldn't be better, right? So he gets around over there and he's noticing there's a bunch of the trees are broken off like 10-12 feet up, a bunch. So he's like, wow, he thinks maybe there's a meteor that impacted around the area. Find a meteor, make some money off a meteor, and spread mom's ashes. Hey, trip's getting better, right? So, not that his mom died, not what I meant. That sounded wrong. Anyway, he scouts it out, finds a place, set up camp. So he gets him a fire going, and this happened towards the end of August. So he was getting plenty of darkness at night, right? As he's got his camp set up, it's just getting on into darkness. And so he starts him a fire and he's got it going, and he's just sitting there reminiscing like he couldn't have had a better day, right? I mean, just everything went smoothly. The plane ride, his hiking, it wasn't super hard, and it was just, he saw why his mom loved the area, right? Now, as he's tending to his fire, Mother Nature calls. He walks a good distance from his camp, and grant you, he's high enough, it's chilly enough that there's no mosquitoes. He doesn't have to worry about, getting bitten all over, So he goes and digs him a trench and he handles his business. Well, he gets done, he's coming back, and he notices, he's looking over at his camp, and he notices just past his camp, as he's coming closer, something is moving away. And so it kind of caught him funny. So he takes a couple side steps to his right, and whatever it was kind of mirrored his steps. So he's going back and forth like this. This thing is doing the same thing, but he can't make out what it is. So he starts laughing. He thinks maybe the pilot came back, landed somewhere out of view, and came to check on him and is kind of teasing him, you know, because, you know, bears don't mimic people's movements like that, you know. So he thinks nothing of it. He starts calling out, hey, hey, you know, calling out the pilot's name or whatever. Nothing. Dead quiet. And he notices a lot more smoke coming from the fire he started. Now, he was using dead spruce, and it burns great. Well, now all of a sudden there's a bunch of birch, alder, and some other scrub brush leaves on top of it, kind of like a smothering thing, right? So he's like, what the hell? So he runs over, he's throwing the stuff off, he's stamping off whatever, and gets his fire right again, and he starts yelling, who in the hell is out here? Now, this whole time, he has had a firearm. He had a .480 Ruger. He had it in his pack. He never even got it out. None of that stuff. He was there about his mom, and protecting himself was secondary the whole day. Now, once he gets everything situated and it dawns on him, something ain't right here. He goes and gets the .480 Ruger. It's chest holster. He slaps it on. Now, as he's strapping this thing on and checking his ammo, he checks the revolver, puts it back. He checks his extra ammo in that chest holster, right? So he's making sure he's got everything he needs, and he's real jittery, he's jumpy, and he's out of his element hard. And he starts talking normal. Hey, whoever's out there, show yourself. I don't want to shoot anybody just trying to play a trick, but you're scaring me. I will kill you. Nothing, not a sound. So he's standing there and he starts feeling watched, and he said he could feel his body slowly start trembling uncontrollably. He couldn't not be scared. He could not control the fear going on within him. So pulls out the revolver and pops fire in the air, you know, shoots a shot in the air. And as he gets done shooting the shot in the air and he's holding the revolver, he's trying to listen. Now, grant you, he just fired a gun. His ears are ringing a little bit, but he's looking for different sounds, the cracking of brush, things of this nature, right? So when Rick is sitting there talking about the ringing going on in his ear when he was talking to me about it, he got really, really quiet. And then he snapped back out of it and goes, yeah, and then I saw it, right? And I was like, well, what exactly did you see? He said he saw two eyes, one on one side of a tree, one on the other, and the tree was dead center of this thing's face. And he said it appeared to be like a caramel tannish color, but a lot of black as well. He said from his vantage point, it almost looked calico, like a calico cat, but with no white, just that you know, cream brown and black color. And he kept swaying back and forth trying to get a better look at this thing, and this thing was just steady looking right at him. He could see the gleam in the eyes, you know, it was life in the eyes, and it was approximately about 30 feet away. And the way I've showed you guys the brush, so the way it was this thing is looking at him, and as he moves to get a better vantage point, this thing would just shift, you know, just constantly go like this. So it was almost like this thing thought that tree was blocking it somehow. I don't know. I don't know the reasoning. It's just speculation. So he's going back and forth trying to get a vantage point on this thing to make out what it is, make sure it's not a human being. And as he's doing so, he pops the revolver open and takes the dead case out and pops in a fresh round and shuts it. Puts it back in the holster and walks back over by his camp to get eye contact with this area again, and it's gone, right? So he's like, shit. So now he knew where it was, but now he doesn't. So he's a little panic stricken, so pulls out, fires again. Now when he fires the second time, he hears two sets of footsteps going away in opposite directions, kind of like a pie-shaped wedge going away from directly behind his tent from where he was, going down the mountainous area towards the valley to the west. and he's immediately, again, panic-stricken. He's shaking, uncontrollable shaking so bad he had to get over by the fire, set the gun down, and just kind of self-soothe himself. He couldn't believe it. Was like, what the fuck was that? What was that? What, he kept arguing with himself. What was that? That was a Sasquatch. That was a wild man. That was, holy shit. And he was coming to grips with it when pine cone, 3 in a row, just bump, 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 right in the fire pit, right in front of him. And he said it was just so fluid and just bloomp, 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 all hitting in the same spot. That's impressive in and of itself. So he looks up. There's nothing above him, but the way they fell was right on top of each other, and it appeared they were coming straight down. So he jumps up. He's got the gun again. He's no longer trembling. He's on point, kind of freaking out on the inside, but holding it together. He doesn't know what to do, and so he starts walking back over to the other side of that pond from his camp where he'd come up the mountain to get to that spot. So he backtracks over there, and he's looking across this pond back at his camp, and he's got the fire going. And as he's looking, he sees something big kind of make a shadow from the fire, but he didn't see the figure itself. He just saw the shadow from the fire go across his tent and move over towards his left. So immediately he's like, enough of this, pulls the gun again and shoots a couple rounds in that general direction. Boom, boom, again, thrashing, crashing, heads back off towards down the mountain towards the west. He gathers himself up and he's feeling confident because the gunshots equals, they leave. So pops it open, takes out the 2 dead, puts in 2 fresh, gets back over to camp, starts rolling things up, stop periodically, pop around in the air, wouldn't hear nothing, set the gun down, loading up, gets everything backpacked up, picks up the firearm, holsters it, and walks back around the pond back over to where he had initially started and started back down his trail. When he started back down that trail, it was just tundra moss, berry bushes, and a little game trail. When he went back over the lip to go downhill, all of a sudden in that same game trail were broken spruce trees laid long ways down. So he would have to walk through the tundra. It would slow him down. So he fucked the trees. He's going down this trail. Everything about what was going on was freaking him out, throwing him off. Having to shoot, these things taking off, seeing the one staring at him. He comes down the trail past these spruce trees in the freaking path and gets onto the bigger path, and it splits into 2. And these are game trails. No one's out there fucking marking these trails. You know what I mean? These are game trails, but they're big. So it splits off at a Y, and he takes it to the right where he knew he had originally came in and landed earlier that day. So he makes it back to the rally point where the pilot's supposed to be in 3 more days. And he literally camped out right there out in the open for those 3 days. Nothing else ever happened except what was going on in his own mind. He literally had 1 round left. He said he had about 50 to 60 rounds total. So over the course of all these days, he would periodically shoot rounds into the air anytime he heard a weird sound. Now, during the nighttime, not during the day, but during the night, he would hear the weird owl hoots. He would hear strange growl, screaming, crying sounds off in the distance. Nothing came in on him again, but he was out in the open. So he sat there and dealt with that crap for 3 nights, 4 days, whatever. When the pilot came back to pick him up, the pilot was there early. The pilot came in just after it was light enough for the pilot to see, take off from where he came from, come pick him up, right? So he was there relatively early, before, like 8 or 9 in the morning. So he jumped, he's ready to go. The pilot was like, oh, I thought I was going to have to find you. And he's already up on the freaking pontoon trying to get in the plane, saying, no, we can go. I should have just made it a day trip and just left it at that with the pilot. The pilot kept trying to engage him on, how was your trip? Anything, you see an exciting wildlife? Rick goes, fuck the wildlife and fuck that. And the pilot said, okay, and left it alone. I understand what you're saying, Rick. You know, fuck the wildlife, man. Fuck that. Anyway, so that's what happened to Rick. Shout out Dave Tech Guy, man. Website looks great. Everyone check it out. subarcticalaskasasquatch.com. We got stuff in the works for some fundraising. It's not looking like I'll be making the Nuyahkuk this year, though. To be determined. I'll update that later. And thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you on the next one.